Hey there. So my next guest is like a prodigy in the esports world. He started when he was 12. He's now 21, and he's got this incredible business, esports team, media team, merchandise. He's got it all. And he just discusses how he did it and how he was able to accomplish so much at such a young age. I know you're all going to love this one. Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the Gamerpreneur podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Bradford Carlton. Today, I have a very special guest with us. I have Tristin Chambers. Hey there, Tristin. How's it going?
I'm doing well, It's day's going so far so good. But thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Where do you hail from, Tristin?
Originally I'm from Los Angeles, but currently I live in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Beautiful.
So definitely a change of pace.
All right. Now, Tristin, I like getting the show started just right into it. So why don't you begin by just telling us a little bit about yourself, please?
Yeah, so where do I begin? I've been in the gaming and the esports industry for the last 9 years. I started out as a content creator back in 2012. And then in 2013, I created my own esports organization, which competes and makes content in multiple different games around the world. And I've been the sole founder and CEO since basically the creation. In 2016, I created what now is a pretty global holdings company called Spark Esports and Entertainment. We have 10 businesses underneath that umbrella. I work also with record labels, esports associations, and a ton of other projects, both on the public and behind the scenes. So
beautiful. And I want to put this in perspective. Can you tell everybody your age, please?
Yeah, I turned 21 last September.
That's incredible. All right. So Tristin, we've got a lot to talk about. Now, before we get into any of that, I start every interview with a single question. So I'm going to ask you, just like I ask everybody else, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being high, how weird are you?
I would say probably like a 5.5. And that's because when I was very young, I was diagnosed with autism. And so there's times where out in public or even in private, social cues for me are tough. And growing up, I had problems like communicating with other people. And so I think now I've gotten a little bit better at it, but the way I kind of get around that weirdness or nerdiness is I'm a big Marvel television fan. So people that can see my background can see some band posters, some Marvel posters. So I've kind of found ways to subvert it, but I'd say a 5.5.
I love that answer. All right. So Tristin, this is the Gamerpreneur podcast. So I do need your gaming cred. When did you first start playing video games?
I started playing video games when I was 6 years old. So from a very early age, I got my hands onto COD 4, and back when even some of the broadcast networks were doing handheld Yahtzee or Deal or No Deal devices. I was living on a military base, so I'd always go down to like local thrift shop or whatever, and just whatever money I had, I'd buy something. And those were the games I started out on. And it would be McDonald's on base would have like games that you could put in and stuff. And randomly one day, some friends put in COD 4. We played it until we got kicked out of there. Went across the street to the Navy Exchange and then played it on the display until they realized like these are a bunch of kids playing an M-rated game. But that's the earliest memory I have of playing video games.
Oh, wonderful. All right. Now, and you've obviously been playing essentially since then. What do you play today now, if anything?
Mainly Call of Duty. I do play a little bit of Halo, Grand Theft Auto. I did dabble a little bit in Counter-Strike on console, which is an odd choice. but it was always kind of fun for me. And then I did I did a brief stint of Fortnite when the earlier seasons were going on, but I probably haven't played in roughly like 2 years. So yeah, I would say mostly I stick to the FPS genre.
Very cool. All right. Now you've been playing essentially since COD4. So
Yeah,
if you had to pick one game as your all-time favorite that you've been playing, which one is it?
I would say Black Ops 2. One, because that's what led me to creating my channel and starting this crazy journey. But at the same time, the way that they really marketed that game, they had a website made where they'd have classified sections that would be revealed, and then they did viral marketing with YouTubers and stuff. I remember they actually shipped out like one of the drones that you could go out and buy. They gave one to FPS Russia, and then he flew it around and did all of his explosions and stuff. And to me, that was like, okay, like no other game could do this. But I just think like that was one of the only Call of Duty games where I ever played the campaign full through. But yeah, that's the game that always sticks out in my mind as the one that I like the most.
Love it. Okay. Now, Tristan, let's get over to the preneur part, because you have had an incredible journey to you're 21 and you've been in esports for like 9 years. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So why did you decide to start getting into esports when you were roughly 12?
So for me, it was I had always loved these Call of Duty communities, sniping, the pubs community, the competitive communities that were existing on YouTube. There was FaZe Clan back in its infancy. There was Optic Gaming, which is the reason why I got into esports, was because I made my channel due to Nade Shot, who now runs 100 Thieves. But from that, and seeing competitive COD and one tournaments on Twitch back when MOG did those, that kind of brought it into a perspective where it's like you can make content, you can compete, you can make money, but you can also own a team. And so I went ahead and I made my team. Originally we started as a content creation team, and then in 2015 was really where we made our entrance into esports officially.
Okay, cool. What kind of challenges did you have starting these businesses as you were going? Because I'm sure people look at you and go like, how are you even old enough to be having this conversation with me?
Yeah. I think starting out, when it was on the content creation side of things, it was very easy to make content back then, and it's even more easier to make content now in the gaming space. And so I always looked at it as, if you have a good personality, if you have a good vision, you you don't necessarily need the most amount of money possible to put something together. But you just basically need vision and a good heart and wanting to help grow people. And so that's really how Awaken got to take off as much as it did. But I think in the later years, once we got into esports, it was, again, I always kind of looked at, I'm trying to help provide opportunities for people who may not ever get that opportunity with another organization, or may not find a family of sorts. And even to this day, when I'm doing contract negotiations with people, one of the ways I like to handle it is, I understand people can't afford an agent. So I, pull up the contract, I screen share, I read it to them, and, I show them everything. I let them negotiate it in real time, so they know that they're getting the best deal.
Okay, very cool. Now, you say you have
that those are some of the biggest. I think those are the biggest challenge.
All right, love it. Now, you said that you have a holding company with 10 businesses under it. Like a lot of people that I know in the esports space are focused, very singular on one aspect, but you've kind of got this web. Like, can you kind of discuss some of the businesses you have?
Yeah. So what initially sparked my interest in creating a holding company was I was getting out of consulting at the time, and for me, I wanted to find what could I do that sparked a lot of creativity and unlimited potential for me, and it was running an incubator and holding company just seemed like that trajectory. So I started off with my esports team and my personal production studio underneath that, and then in late 2018, sorry, I created a tournament operator called the Legacy Pro League, which is still in its kind of like ghost status as of right now. And that was to do community teams in leagues that were for owners and players by owners and players. So it had no direct publisher support, which was a bold concept back then. And then since then, we've expanded to merch, to technology and software, to over the top streaming and subscription platforms like Disney Plus or Netflix, for example. And I really would say, I diversified anything that you can think of that would be needed in sports, esports, entertainment, and related areas. We kind of do. So it's been kind of a fun thing, and we still have some agencies, some marketing, some talent management stuff within. So, it's not completely gone from the original focus, but yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Now, Tristin, like, did you have to figure all of this out yourself, or was this something that you had some advisors helping you? Like, how does a teenager figure out how to do this?
So on the esports team side, I have a lot of staff and a lot of members, and we're all a family in a sense. I always tell them that I consider a lot of you guys family more than my actual family. And so for me, I'm always taking ideas, always doing calls and meetings with them. But when it came to the holding company, it's really been me making those decisions. I have no advisors, no board of directors, no investors. So I really get to, take my mind and say, okay, I've been fixated on this idea for 2 or 3 days, and I see only a couple of companies in that related area doing something like, let's test this out. And so, luckily, I think it's worked. It's a very unorthodox pattern, but it somehow has worked.
Okay. Now, I have met a lot of people over the years. I was your age at one point, and I was nowhere near as accomplished as you are. And there's plenty of 21-year-olds out there who are just trying to figure out what it is they're supposed to be doing in life. So let me ask you, what made you special or unique that you were able to kind of weave your path through here while everybody else is still trying to figure out what life means?
So for me, I mean, growing up, I lived in a big business family. On my mom's side, my grandmother was an IRS agent for 20 years. My grandfather ran his own pool service company. On my dad's side of the family, my grandfather was a stockbroker for 20 years. My grandmother was a teacher, but then became the only woman to serve in the Lincoln Airport Authority. So I had definitely big shoes to, and even my dad spent 20 years in the Navy. So I really had a lot to kind of hold up to and everything. So I just wanted to be really ambitious, and especially growing up as a kid, I knew because of my autism, I wasn't going to be athletically gifted or academically gifted, but the ability to think differently than a lot of other people and make sometimes what seems irrational decisions has sometimes worked it has most times actually worked into my favor. So and also I think for me, it was a pattern of not necessarily caring about my GPA in high school and being like, look, it's great. I'm learning all these things, but like, what's the difference between going and reading about something or going out and doing that thing, that you just learned about, and so for me, sometimes in the middle of class, I'd be texting a captain for one of my rods, messaging with a sponsor and being like, hey, when is this product coming? When is this deliverable happening? Like, coordinating merch. And for me, I think that just put me ahead of the game for at my age. But it's also that I just knew that really I just I didn't I didn't necessarily mind not going to college or the preferred college, but it was I just wanted to build something and hopefully make a career out of it, and I feel like I've done a good job out of that.
All right, that is so wonderful. Now, if you could go back in time and do it all over again, or more specifically, if you could go back in time and tell yourself everything that you know now, like, what is the most important thing you would say to yourself?
Going back, would I do it all over again? Yes. I don't necessarily know if I would tell myself all the, like a specific thing or like, hey, this is what's going to happen 9 years later. And there's two reasons why I wouldn't. One, because I'd be afraid, of my past self being like, okay, if this is what's going to happen, like, like what decisions will come out of knowing that, just in an alternate reality aspect. But at the second point, I think it's you naturally just have to learn these things on your own and not like case study everything or look at like this person's experience led them to this. So I think that's what I do. But I guess any advice I would give myself is just like, and it's advice I give to a lot of people is don't let anyone tell you that you can't do something. Like whether it's starting a YouTube channel or starting a team or starting a business in high school or starting a podcast or whatever it may be, just do it. Like even if it goes nowhere in a year, at least you did it, right? And you didn't let someone convince you to not do that,
Certainly. All right. Now, Tristin, I don't want everyone out there listening to this think that life has been nothing but sunshine and rainbows for you, that you've accomplished everything, that you're Superman here. Okay. So I'd like to ask you, what do you consider your biggest, we'll call it a learning experience? I would normally call it a failure, something that where you fell down on your face, didn't quite go the way you want it to.
Yeah.
What did you learn from it?
I think there's a couple that always come to mind. The first one is, there's when it comes to signing teams and maybe at times launching a business, you hope that you have that right competitive team in place, and sometimes you'll bend over backwards for them, spend way much more money than you want to, and it doesn't work out. I think there's a couple times where that's happened, and I would go back in time and probably backhand myself for that and be like, look, that is a very bad decision. Just don't let that play out the way it would. But I think the second one is, for me, that really hurts a lot of the time is, because I've mentioned I'm a person who loves giving opportunities to people, who really wants to see people learn and thrive and adapt. I put a lot of people in my organization, or just in general, into my organization that have no management experience and say, I'm going to, I'll put you into a general manager, marketing officer, or an operations role. And hopefully you can learn, the same way that I learned these things. And sometimes it goes well, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes, it blows up, and I think you have to really learn how to handle those situations. I think the biggest challenge that I have to deal with personally is that as an owner, I try to please everyone the best I can, and I try to go as just over and beyond as I can, and sometimes that doesn't happen, and for me that it's an unfortunate thing. But I think that there's a whole list of things I could probably list off, but those are the ones that come to mind.
Okay. Now, on the opposite side of that, what do you consider your greatest success?
I consider my greatest success to really be my channel and my esports team, because really, like, I think without my channel, who's to say any of this would have ever happened. And that's what got me doing all the things I do, such as my podcast and my gaming team and all these other things, and going out to concerts and vlogs and gaming with people all across the world. So I think that, but then at the same time, I think my esports team is really kind of the legacy that I have, or one of the cornerstone, I would say, because to be running something for almost 8 years, starting out again as a kid and running it to the point, dealing with all the sponsorships and contracts and growing the brand and recruiting people and building the foundation and the values and so forth. I think that's my greatest achievement, really.
Okay, fantastic. Now, does it feel any different? When you started, you were 12, now you're 21. Does it feel different, or are you just more knowledgeable?
It definitely does, because even myself, when I'm taking time to reflect, or just thinking about things and talking to myself, some days I go, it's crazy, because again, you had told me 9 years ago that, hey, you're going to be 21 years old, you're going to be running all these different projects, and you're expanding out, and you get to meet bands, just in general, but then also working with people and building a resume. Again, I would call even myself crazy. But I think I wouldn't change anything for the world. I think that the way things have played out, I go to bed every night, being blessed, because a lot of people, again, at my age, and even people older than me, would probably at my age would have loved to have the resume or the achievements I've had.
Wonderful. All right, Tristan, one last question before we start bringing this in for a landing, all right? But what is something that you're working to improve on yourself today?
I mean, I'm constantly working on improving myself and a lot of different things that I'm doing. And what I've kind of done is I've created a system called the rule of three, and it's something that I can always change depending on the project that I'm working on. But I look at, let's give a good example. So, through my production company and my streaming service, I'm working on a bunch of television shows and stuff. And, I look at, in the context of the rule of three, what is the plot, the dialogue, the overall story, but then, the dialogue, the tone, and all that. And then, lastly, how does that delve into a personal connection with an audience? But I look at how, I always try to adapt that to myself personally, and as well, any project that I'm working on. So if it's a merch collection, like, what is the the branding behind this? What is the theme? What what are we trying to get out of it? What is going to be in that collection, and then how do we target people with that collection, and so forth. But I think for me personally, I'm always trying to learn, because as a 21-year-old, I realized that I don't know everything, the way I thought I used to. have been times where, like, if you'd ask me if I ever thought an esports org would end up on the stock market, I'd tell you you're crazy. And now that's happened, and and some of the the childhood heroes that I looked up to, like Shaquille O'Neal, getting into esports, like it's for me, I always looked at those things as like crazy things, but I think just that's how I do things. Is I just try to learn, I try to adapt, I try to be the kind of reckless innovator. And the other piece of advice I want to give to a lot of people listening to this is be the exception, not the rule. Like, again, it goes back to that whole thing I mentioned of don't let anyone tell you can't do something, because for me, I had people doing that my entire life, and being able to disrupt someone saying you're not 18, you're not going to get ahead in business by doing this, or oh you're just a kid, what do you know about business, or oh, stick to school, let the adults play with this, or like even if it's something where it's a business concept and someone being, I don't think that this will work, just do it, because you're going to be a lot happier knowing that you did it, and that even if it doesn't work today, you can always come back to it a year later.
That's some beautiful advice, Tristin. Thank you so much. Now, how do people find you? How do they reach out? Where are you on social media, your team, everything, please?
Yeah. So for me personally, I'm very lucky because most of my social profiles have all been brand consistent, besides like 2 or 3 platforms. But on Twitter and Instagram, you can find me at Taze the God. That's TAZE, the word the and God and everything. And then on YouTube, the same thing. I have a LinkedIn, I have a Twitch page as well, which is the Twitch page is Taze the OG. I try to stream as much as I can, but it's not always possible given the schedule that I have. And then for my esports team, you can find us across a wide variety of social media at awakenmilitia. And then for my startup incubator, the social media handles for that is sparkgca. So yeah, that's where people can find me. But I mean, otherwise, I'm always on some corner of the universe. I think the only corner that I have an account on that I don't go to is Reddit. And probably won't for some time. The whole GameStop Wall Street bets thing kind of reinforced, like, okay, Reddit's a dangerous place. Do not go.
Beautiful. All right, Tristin, as we wrap this up, do you have any final thoughts you want to share? Anything I didn't ask you think we still need to cover?
I mean, I think that, if you want to ask me about current or future projects that are in the pipeline, that's the only thing that comes to mind.
Sure, tell us, please.
So yeah, as I briefly mentioned earlier, I'm starting a direct-to-consumer streaming service called Replay. It's an idea that came out of just wanting to do something 2 years ago for fun, and I have 2 shows in the pipeline where I'm building my own kind of story cinematic universe in a way, not to the likes of Marvel or DC, because I don't have that much money. But in terms of things, like, I'm doing a lot of interesting genre type of shows, and even planning short films. I mean, I'm currently running a podcast as well, so we're going to be throwing episodes out into the public world sometime here soon. And then, I mean, on the Spark side of things, we just we've kind of made a plan that by the end of the spring, we at least want to have 3 more companies under our umbrella, bring it up to unlucky 13. I think after that, who knows what I may do, because I'm like, I want to be able to manage everything. But and then on the esports team side of things, We just launched our phase 1 campaign. So it's a bunch of things that we want to get done by the first half of the year. So we want to roll out 10 content series for all of our teams, all of our members and stuff. So that's podcasts, flagship shows, again, team series centered around each one of our teams and how they play, even, if it's online and stuff. We want to have 4 apparel collections, I believe, all different themes that have never been explored in esports, that all kind of tell a unique story, the same way that you see kind of these abstract posters on social media and everything, and kind of also taking a little bit of inspiration from the music industry and how they do graphic t-shirts. So that's a little bit fun, but we're always just adapting and coming up with really crazy and interesting ideas. So those are the ones that I can think of right now. But I think other than that, for me, it's just personally a little bit of soul searching and finding also, like what's next to add to my list, because I know at least I'm probably going to be doing this till I'm like 80 years old.
Beautiful. Tristin Chambers, thank you so much for coming on with us today. This was a fantastic interview. I genuinely appreciate it.
Yeah, the honor and the pleasure is all mine.
Thank you again. And for everybody else, I'm going to remind you all, don't be just a gamer, be a gamerpreneur.